it doesn't mean we have to go along with things when she's insulting father and slandering father as a sinner. And so I just want to know, what was your perception of all this that's going on over the last year or so, and what's your reaction to everything I've said? I hope you took notes.
Wow. Mental notes. But I mean, honestly, I didn't need to take too many like physical notes because I think a lot of what you said is kind of common sense to me, and also it's much of what you said I agree with, to be honest. I I always, yeah, whenever I have this kind of discussion or we talk about like what do you think of the new theology or what do you think of True Mother's position, I always think back to around, I think it must have been 2013, 2014, and I was watching a speech and True Mother was speaking, and I remember just feeling a sense of like mistrust or just I wasn't convinced that what she
Wow.
was saying was um the truth, or it was just like the way she was saying it. It just kind of disturbed me, and
Hmm.
I turned to my mom and I said, "Look, I don't know, I don't know exactly why or what is going on, but I just don't feel like I fully trust or believe True Mother right now." And I didn't really know
Wow.
what was going on. I was like 13 at the time.
Yeah.
Uh,
What did your mum say?
well, my mum also went on this journey where she wasn't sure if she, like, how much she believed True Mother as well, or like
Hmm.
how much faith she had in her. And she's at a point now where she's like very happy with True Mother, but it was a journey. Like she also went through this phase where it's like I don't know what's going on, and uh, I also remember not so long after I watched this speech, and we were just watching it at home. You know, they one of those church services or so, something
Yeah.
going on in Korea. Not so long after, a few months after, I watched the Breaking the Silence video that Hyung Jin shared on YouTube. I watched it
Yeah.
with my dad
Is
actually.
that just after he got fired from everything?
It's like the big one, kind of, I guess you could say the start of Sanctuary Church, where
Yeah.
it was this service, Breaking the Silence, where he basically, I think at that point he wasn't going after True Mother, but it was more like the people around True Mother, and he
Yeah.
was saying that,
If I can give some background to that, so when I was in Korea, 2002 to 2011, I was working with Hyung Jin just as he's starting his mission, and he was really supportive. And Cook Jin took over the businesses. That's the
yes,
genius of father. His father recognized that his children have different interests and talents, and so he encouraged them in their areas. And so
mm,
Cook Jin took over the businesses, and a lot of those businesses were failing, losing money. So many big businesses as well. And so what he did was Cook Jin recognized the ones that couldn't be saved, sold them, had to let the people go, and then invested in the ones that were doing well. And he was doing great. And then he made a big error. After he got a handle of all the Korean businesses, he turned his eye of Sauron onto Chongpyong, and he wanted to look at the financial books because Chongpyong is a branch of the Unification Church, right? Not a business,
yeah,
but it's a branch. But Chongpyong was actually independent. People just thought all the money they're giving to Chongpyong is for the movement. It was actually controlled by Humanim, who I, who I
well,
refer who I refer to as the witch in Chongpyong, because they thought she was a church member. She was never a church member. Her her son, she funneled all the money to her family. In Korea, even businessmen can't afford a golf course membership because land is so expensive. They have to go to a digital driving range. Her husband owned a golf course, right? Costing tens or hundreds of millions. He owned a deer farm as well. And her son owned a restaurant in, Gangnam style, right? In Gangnam, which is the most expensive area in Seoul. And she was funneling all sorts of money to her son. They even tried to marry one of her daughters or granddaughters to one of true parents' granddaughters. And at the last moment, they found out that she'd had an abortion, two abortions, and they were scamming that she's like a perfect person. Anyway, so in the end, Mother sided with Humanim because Mother thought that Humanim is occupied by the spirit of her own mother, right? And so this woman worked to destroy Kukjinim and Hyungjinim. So already she's turning Mother against Hyungjinim and Kukjinim. So Kukjinim was removed from the businesses. He never did get to see the books in Chongpyong. Fast forward a few years, fast forward a few years, and then it came to a head between True Mother and Humanim. And it turned out
Yeah.
this Humanim lady had embezzled hundreds of millions of dollars from Chongpyong, and she had
Wow.
private control of it. And the only way it was resolved is they had a settlement where she gave some of the money back to the church. And that's why she's no longer around in Chongpyong, because she was found out to be a scammer, and she got away with it. Who knows how many tens of millions or even hundreds of millions? But that was how that came to a head. And then next thing you know, Hyungjinim is in America, and then we have the great big scandal of Injinim, who had an unfortunate habit of making a relationship with other women's husbands, more than one. And then she ended up with musical Jesus, right? Ben Lawrenson. And
Yeah, I've heard of him.
he was married and had a child, right, from Scandinavia. So I understand she was pretty much railroaded into marriage to Jinsung Park. And if she couldn't find happiness, I wouldn't lose faith or complain if she said, look, we've had these children, I've tried for 10 or 15 years, I can't find any happiness, I need to find somebody to be happy with. She divorced him and found somebody. But instead, she went under the radar and just made a relationship with somebody else's wife. Even that I can understand, because people sometimes, I'm not perfect. I've done things in my past that I'm still ashamed of, so I can't judge. I have no standing to judge. But what I can't agree with is, after she went away and came back with a secret pregnancy, so many young impressionable members lost faith because of the betrayal and left the faith, right? And lost their
Yeah.
relationship with true parents. And then Injinim started giving sermons distorting divine principle to justify what she did. She was saying,
Mm.
well, doesn't divine principle say that God wants us to be happy? And being with this person makes me happy, so obviously it's God's will. That's not quite what divine principle says.
Yeah,
If
it's
you
a
have to
stretch.
destroy a family to find your satisfaction, that's not divine principle. Anyway, after so many people were hurt by that, and then what was really impressive to me was Hyung Jim and his wife. Is it Yon in him? Anyway,
I don't know.
they went around America, visiting different regions and different cities and different church communities, spending hours and hours with them, just listening to their heartache and their pain and their complaints and their doubts, and like really comforting them. And it's amazing. That's why when I first met Hyungjin and his wife, I was really impressed that they never used the phrase ex-member, because ex-member was a typical phrase in our church. It's almost like betrayal. But they used the phrase resting member instead, which shows
Mm.
understanding and sympathy for people's struggles, right? And I knew at that time when I saw them use the phrase resting member that they were people that had a heart. And then they were doing great. They were restoring people's faith all around America. Next thing you know, True Mother fires them just out of the blue, no warning. And that's when we go back to when just the beginnings of Sanctuary Church, when Hyungjin was trying to say that, True Mother's saying this about Father, I'm sorry, we can't accept it. Or Father said, please don't ever change these sacred texts, and now she's changing them all, right? That's when True Mother started to
Mm.
realize Hyungjin's not going to be my puppet. And then that's when he also recognized just how many power players there are behind True Mother. And remember, a lot of these clerics and church leaders in Korea, they're not even second gen. They're first gen ministers, right? They're all gathering around
Mm.
True Mother. And that's why I got in trouble when I was living in Lancaster Gate, because somebody sent from Korea a declaration putting Hyungjin down, right? And then the church leaders in Lancaster Gate sent it around to everybody. And I thought to myself, so these are first generation are attacking somebody in God's direct lineage, trying to destroy his reputation, right? Does that sound right? It
Mm.
sounds more like satanic. So I posted on my Facebook, in case you run out of toilet paper and you need something to wipe your ass with. And I posted a picture of that thing. And they tried to kick me off the church council and evict me from the building after that. But I did it on purpose to insult them, because to wake them up, but they didn't wake up. Anyway, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
jumped in there. So you're up to the point where Hyunjin is doing the big declaration, right? And
Yeah. So I remember watching it, and I was thinking, like, I'm so happy to be watching somebody who says it as it is, and it's just blunt and upfront, and is pointing out some of the flaws, and I mean, even corruption, like with money laundering, and saying, look, you guys as members have been taken advantage of, and I want to help correct things like the embezzlement of funds in Japan, for example. I know he said like the extortionate tithing practices that are going on there, and obviously we saw the consequences of that a few years later. But just hearing that and the way he spoke, I felt, oh, this is somebody that I can get behind. Like I appreciate his honesty, his directness.
Yeah.
So I was at that time I was really thinking, okay, this is the man I want to follow. This is the man I want to look towards. Then I don't know, I was probably 14, 15. I remember having these conversations, going on European workshops, talking to people, just saying like, do you know about this? Like Hyung Jin and breaking the silence. And I feel like it's worth getting to know. And I'm not saying that he's 100% right and other people are wrong, but I think it's just
Yeah.
good to be aware of. And even watching those videos where True Father declared, okay, he will be my successor, and the
Hmm.
signings and everything that went on with that, I thought, okay, this is good to be aware of, because, okay, is he meant to be the successor now? Or does this mean that he's meant to be the successor when True Mother passes away? Like, trying to figure that out. Uh, then I remember even going to SDF with this thought in my mind, like what's going on? It's all a bit confusing. I actually had a
Mm.
dream not so long before I went on SDF where I was an assassin and my target was Shimada.
Oh my God.
And in my dream, I
Should
it
I
was
should
just like,
I
all this.
should I edit that out or or keep it raw?
Maybe, I don't know. I've told some people this story before. I mean,
Yeah.
in my dream, I was going up one escalator and she was coming down the other, and I was like debating in my head, like, should I pull the
Oh
trigger? Should
my
I pull it?
God. Oh
And then I
no.
woke up before I got to do anything. I like I woke up, right?
Okay, that's
But I
good.
mean, I just shared that because I think it helps to
Yeah.
illustrate like
It was just
what
an
was going on in
expression
my mind.
of the antagonism. We can't choose our dreams. No, people shouldn't read into that
Yeah,
any intent. But yeah,
yeah.
and by the
But
way,
anyway, I remember.
sorry, just to give you a quick anecdote of the how bad the embezzlement was going on in Japan. I'm going to tell you two stories, okay? Not just Japan, it was going on in Korea too. So there was a Japanese missionaries in Japan. They were constant, and there was a guy, a Korean guy, who was the national messiah, one of the national messiahs in Ireland, and he was going to Japan and telling all these churches that we need money for the missions in Ireland, and so they were donating money for years every month. Then one day, some of these Irish people were in Japan, or the Japanese members were on a trip to Ireland, and they said, "Oh, by the way, did you get all the money we sent?" And they said, "No, what money? We didn't get anything." This guy, this Korean leader, took all the money and built a house in Korea with it, and so it was just a scam. But the worst one of all, is all the families in a big region in Japan. You know how so many members there, right? And they're so sacrificial. They
Mhm.
decided they decided we'd love to have a high school, or no, we'd love to have a middle school, all our second gen children, where we can really teach them values. And so they saved up for like 10 years, donating and sacrificing hundreds of families, maybe thousands. And so they built up this huge amount of money, and they were ready to break ground on building a whole middle school. And you know how expensive land is in Japan. And then at the last moment, the Japanese leader just decided on a whim to donate all that money to Korea without consulting the members or anything, just so he could feel, look at me, aren't I the great sacrificial one? So yeah, that's been constantly breaking people's heart. And so anyway, so after Sanctuary Church kicked off, where did your faith on the matter go from there? Did you just withdraw and focus on your family, or did you stay in touch with the goings on?
Well, I remember basically at one point sitting down with my dad, and I just kind of shared my feelings, and I asked him, so where do you stand? Like, do you follow True Mother, or do you follow
Can
Young
I
Jim?
stop?
Like,
Can I stop you there? I know your dad's a prominent figure in the UK. He's on the
yeah,
trustees. Um, just only say what you think he'd be happy for you to say publicly.
sure, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I think what I'm going to share is stuff that he would say,
Okay.
and he said that he's not taking sides. Like for him, that's just stupid. That it's actually very similar to what you were sharing before. It's not about saying like true mother's wrong and not loving her anymore, or saying that this person's right. He said the way I see it is that this is a family. When I joined, I didn't join a movement or a church. Well, maybe a movement, but I definitely didn't join a church. That's not what he saw it as. He said I joined a family,
Yeah, I
and
like
so
that.
it's my responsibility as a member of the family to try to restore what's gone on and try to reconcile their differences.
Mm.
I'm not going to take sides, because if this is my family, then this is my mother and this is my brother, and there's a disagreement there, there's disharmony, but I'm not going to take one side over the other. I want to restore their relationship.
Although at the
I
same
thought, okay,
time, although at the same time, if the mother in the family had lots of power over every family member, and the father had passed away, and then the mother started accusing the father of being a rapist or something when everyone knew it wasn't true, you wouldn't say, I'm not going to take sides on that. You would say, look, I love you, mum, but this is not true. That would be taking sides on the argument, but not on the family. Does that make sense?
yeah. Yes, it makes sense to make the distinction between the argument and the family. But I think for him, it was like, okay, I'm not like picking one person over
Mm,
another. I might have
yeah.
some questions as to what's going on, and I might think that improvements need to be made, but it's not like I'm not here to point fingers. I'm not here to take sides. I
Mm,
want to kind of help to resolve this. And he didn't, I don't remember his going into detail about how he would resolve it, you know? I'd like not like, oh, he didn't say anything like, oh, I think true mother has strayed from the truth, and that we need to start the reconciliation uh by like trying to kind of figure out what's gone on there, or like what's gone wrong. He said it was more like when you're in those positions, there are a lot of people who uh, like who will say things to you and they will make you think certain things about certain people. And he said even with True Father, you know, the people around him influenced him to kind of maybe distrust some of his own sons before, you know, and to move the power from people like Hyunjanim to Hyungjanim, right? So
yeah,
the from and he said like
I agree
he
with
wasn't
that.
sure. Yeah, he wasn't sure if that was maybe the best thing to do, but he said when you're such a prominent figure, when you're such a powerful person, people want to have your ear and they want to put themselves above the people that maybe you are trusting. And by
Mm,
pushing down people who are challenging your authority, you can stay in power.
of
And so
course, yeah.
I think he was basically saying that with what happened to Hyun Jinim, who was obviously like head of SDF and like
Mm.
GPF and all of that stuff. Like I think he also has a lot of respect for him, and like maybe there's some kind of like how can I put this? It's like some disappointment maybe that didn't go further, or
Yeah, I think
that there was this.
I think people didn't recognize that the whole father wasn't buying into the whole paradigm that just I have to choose one person to be the big head honcho, right? Because
Mm,
In God's providence, it's always been about unity, about people working together, the prophet and the king, or the pope and the emperor. And uh, William Haynes
yeah,
has taught us a lot about that. And I think Father hoped that Hyungjanim, Sanctuary Hyungjanim, would be his bailiwick would be the spiritual side of the movement, and Preston Hyunjin Moon, his bailiwick would be more the dynamic, forward-facing, you could say PR side, STF side. They're coaching him the business, right? And each person, and they could
yeah,
all cooperate towards a common goal, centered on true parents. But I think ego crept in, and they had family arguments, and then even among those two children, they just the factions developed, and I think Kukjinim swayed Hyungjinim to his side a lot. And Kukjinim is naturally an aggressive person, and
mm,
so his approach didn't mix well with Preston because they're both aggressive people, and so they found it hard to compromise, and that
yeah,
yeah, that's the tragedy. So yeah, your dad has some good points there,
yeah.
and so,
And I
go on,
sorry.
go on, you go ahead.
Yeah, so I was gonna say that that was a really important discussion for me. Like that
Mm.
conversation really helped to guide me going forwards because I didn't want to pick one person over another. Like I was coming to him with the question like who should I follow or like who do you think is right? And he didn't just give me a black and white answer like that, but he gave me an answer that made a lot more sense to me. And I thought actually that's how I want to look at it as well. So going
Yeah,
forwards, I thought, okay, that's true, and I'm part of this family, like you were discussing with the whole engrafting business.
yeah.
If my dad has joined this family and I'm engrafted onto it as well, then I have some responsibility to try to restore what's gone wrong. And I think, I went on SDF. I wasn't following so much of what people were saying for a little while. I came back. There was the lockdown. And then at some point, I kind of tuned back into Sanctuary to see what's going on there, and I thought, oh, this is not how I remember it,
It's
and
a
it's
little bit
also I feel like
eccentric.
yes, it's gone a bit further than I'm willing to go with it. Like
Yeah.
I appreciated and respected Hyung Jin and his honesty to begin with, but then I think his solutions and like you mentioned, things like divorcing your own parents and calling your mother names. I just couldn't get behind it. I was like, that's way
Yeah.
too far. I can't.
Yeah.
I understand that he feels like he needs to be radical and he needs to be blunt and like make decisive solutions now, and he has to take drastic action. But I just couldn't get behind it. I just couldn't
Yeah.
see that as the solution.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the same.
At the
I
same
love.
time,
Sorry, go on. Yeah.
I was just going to say, at the same time, I was hearing stuff that was coming out from True Mother's side, and I also couldn't get fully behind it.
Yeah. Some
Where
of the
I
things I
thought,
mentioned earlier, right?
yeah, I mean, I had this breakthrough that I'll come to in a while in terms of that helped me to understand, at least I felt like I understand it a little bit better. But for a while, I just thought, I don't understand why she's saying some of the things she's saying. The only begotten business, like the language really bothered me because I
Mm.
just thought it wasn't true. And I thought,
It's
well,
not. It's
this
not
is
true. But
I just thought this goes against the historical record of the church. Like,
yeah.
if things had worked out with true father's first wife, then you wouldn't have been the only begotten daughter. Anyway, I heard an explanation later that said, okay, the definition of the only begotten daughter is maybe something different from what you think it is, and that kind of made sense to me. But anyway, just for now,
It's easy to explain something if you get to make up a new definition of a word, though, isn't it?
yeah, it's
Right.
true.
So that's what
But
they did. That's what they just invented a new definition for begotten.
yeah, but I think anyway, to begin with, I just thought, well, it could have been somebody else. It didn't have to be you.
Yeah,
And
of
like you were
course. Yeah.
saying, in terms of the prepared lineages, there were multiple.
Yeah.
So that means you're not the only one. And
Yeah.
it also means that it was possible for you not to be the true mother. But then with everything that was coming out with her autobiography and
Mm.
her teachings, it was really like, I I should always have been true mother. And then yes, this stuff coming out about maybe true father made a mistake by being married before he got married to me. And I just can't endorse that position. I don't think it's
Yeah.
true.
And calling him
Uh,
a sinner is the worst because
yeah.
and there are church members that I've come across, older church members, and they say, well, yes, he was the Messiah and perfect, but he was flawed. No, if you're perfect, you're not morally flawed. You might make a
Mm,
mistake when you're doing business or this or that, but not morally. You don't sin when you're
mm,
perfect. So it's like they've lost faith in true Father. Regarding Hyungjin in Sanctuary Church, first of all, I wish he wasn't bald like me, right? I mean, because he's got a beautiful head of hair, and if he wore a suit, and he was a traditional pastor in the Unification Church, and after Father passed away, if Hyunjin would have said, "Look, we can't go along with all these declarations with True Mother because they're against our theology, but I still love her. She's still my mother, but we're just going to
mm,
go a separate way, and maybe we can reconcile." And then if his ministry was taking care of people's spiritual life and maintaining Father's tradition and legacy, it would have been beautiful. But
mm.
okay, so he's got some eccentricities, and I think heavily influenced by his brother Kukjin, but with all the guns and the Hell's Angel stuff and the rap singing and the stuff like that, wearing death skulls and
Yeah.
the Alex Jones style reports, look, I put it down to just eccentricity. It's not my style, and to be honest, there's a little bit of hypocrisy because the whole thing is about you should be able to, Second Amendment, free to carry guns anywhere you want, right? But in their own church, when they had a gun blessing ceremony, like you see in the Vice video, they disabled all the guns, didn't they? They took out the cartridges and the magazines, and they put things in to prevent them from being fired. Obviously, you don't want a nutcase going in there. But so I think of it as eccentricity. The key value of Hyungjinim, apart from him being God's child, like we all are, is that he is a continuation of God's direct lineage on earth. He is unfallen. He loves his wife dearly. He keeps faith in true Father, and all of his children are pure, 5 children, I believe, and he educates them greatly on purity and on God's lineage and on true Father. And they will have children of their own and grandchildren. Through him, God's lineage will grow stronger and stronger. And it will grow through some of the other true children. I don't know which ones have remained pure. I don't want to say or even judge, but whatever is pure in God's lineage, we know that Hyungjinim is for sure. So even if I completely disagreed with all his theology, it wouldn't matter. Theology comes and goes, to be honest. It will all pass away. It's better to maintain Father's correct theology. But it would be better for a true child who has the wrong theology but remains pure to develop more branches of God's lineage than for somebody who has fallen to have the correct theology. But ideally, remain pure and have the correct theology. So Hyungjinim's got some really bad theology, and the worst thing he does is appointing a new true mother. That Kang Shil lady, she's been around since the 50s. If Father wanted her to be true mother, he could have appointed her anytime he wanted, but he didn't. And so it's a grave mistake for Hyungjinim to have a picture of her as a true mother and be telling everybody that she's true mother. But it's a mistake that can be recovered from. It can be absorbed. What can't be absorbed is the destruction of God's lineage. And so many members have had their hearts so broken by all the mistakes in the providence that they no longer value God's direct lineage, right? They think because Hyungjinim's at war with true mother and got some theology they don't like, then he's not valuable anymore. He's the most valuable. His family is the most valuable because it's God's direct lineage. And all the second and third generation around that, right? The next Messiah, well, let me say, the next perfect person may come from God's direct lineage, or it may come from the blessed children's lineages. And what will happen is, if I can just briefly tell you, what will happen is eventually there'll be another perfect person. The last time between Jesus and true Father took 2,000 years. I'm guessing it will take just a few generations, or maybe 100 or a few hundred years, but there'll be another perfect person. And when we do, we'll have clarity again, like we did with true Father. But the problem is, he'll have to marry a blessed child who's not perfect. So there won't be a true parent. There won't be a couple that's both perfect. And then one day, there'll be another perfect person born. And it might be a woman. Well, not born, but grown, a person who can grow to perfection. It might be one of your children, right? and that person will be a powerful figure in God's providence and revitalize the church and the providence. And then one day, there'll be 2 perfect persons at the same time on earth. But they might both be men, so they'll both have to marry imperfect spouses again. Or they might both be women. And then one day, there'll be 2 perfect people on earth. One will be a man and one will be a woman. But the man, when he's 20, the woman could already be 70, so they can't form a couple. But eventually there'll be 2 perfect people concurrently on earth. One is a man, one is a woman of marriage age. They will get married. They will get married. They won't be true parents because true parents will always be true parents, but they will get married. But for the first time ever, they will be a couple who are both perfect, married to one another, and in that proper trinity with God where all beings are perfect. And they'll have a massive impact on the development of God's providence. And then it will happen more and more and more where you'll get perfect couples and individuals until there's eventually one on every continent at the same time, then one in every country, then one in every city, and eventually one in every county or one in every region or even every street. And then it's game over for Satan. So it's our job. It's our job to strengthen that family tree of God, that direct line and the blessed children's line. And so when we shouldn't allow our hearts to be broken by disappointments and to turn away from faith. We should absorb that and love it even more And we should think of that and visualize it as a real tree in a real garden. And we're gardening and we're doing the best that we can to nurture that tree. And so that's why, yeah, I like your point of view on your dad's. We should look beyond disagreements about theology. While at the same time, if somebody so prominent like True Mother with an army of theologians around her in Korea are completely slandering and memory holding True Father and recasting him as a sinner, as a failed Messiah, that's damaging. And so it should be countered, in my view.
Yeah, no, I agree. Actually, I didn't tell you this, but I'm studying now at UTS, or HJI as it's being rebranded. I
Oh,
just took a
really?
course now.
So is UTS continued?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was just all shut down.
No. So they sold that the building,
Yeah,
right?
in Tarrytown.
But
What's
the
HTI mean?
HJI is
Oh, HTI.
Hyojong International.
Okay.
So, you know, a lot of
Jong,
things kind of
Jong,
got.
Jong means mind or heart. What is the Hyo?
Hyojong is like filial heart, like
Okay, good.
filial
Yeah,
piety.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, it's a nice name.
Yeah, it's nice. It's
and what?
confusing because you always have to introduce it as UTS stroke HJI because it hasn't been HJI long enough for people to know what you're talking about if you introduce it as
And
that.
is it like Open University where there's no central building in America location, or is it related to Korea?
No, I think there is a headquarters in New York still, somewhere
Okay,
else,
cool.
just not
First,
Barrytown.
you'll have to unlock your device.
And
I don't know. My
what are
phone
you
thought I was-
studying? What are you studying?
So I'm getting my master's in religious education there, or religious studies.
Cool.
And I just finished the course now in unification theology. So
Wow. Has it got any distortions in it from the new theology, or is it the traditional stuff?
Well, I was gonna say that there's this one course I haven't taken yet, but I saw, and it was like towards a theology of the only begotten daughter.
Oh my God.
And I haven't taken it, but I am interested in taking it just to see what is being said. You know,
like studying Marxism, so you can counter what they're doing, right? Can I just make a?
Yeah.
Can I just? Well, actually, before I tell you what only begotten means, tell me what you think it means, specifically the begotten part.
Well, what I was told, and I can't even remember exactly now where I first heard this, but wait, was it? It might have been Damien Dunkley, but it was something like the only begotten daughter is the first person who is like the first woman in history who was able to like have a direct relationship with God as God's daughter.
Okay.
So Jesus is the only begotten son because he was the first one in that position as the a messianic figure who's a male. And then True Mother is the only begotten daughter because she's the first one. I think it's a little bit confusing because like you're using the word only instead of first, but you could just put that down to translation. But that was the definition that was given to me, and I was like, okay, it kind of makes sense.
It sounds like that's the definition. It's just another way of saying perfect, a person who became perfect.
Yeah, you could see it that way as well. It's like just another way of putting it. But because people use that language to do with when they're describing Jesus, then if you use that same language and use daughter,
it's loaded. It's loaded language.
Yeah, and it reinforces this relationship that you were talking about earlier with True Mother emphasizing her relationship with Jesus more.
Yeah, which is weird.
In recent speeches.
I mean, it's loaded language in the way that I can say I'm God's son, but I can't say I'm the son of God, because that phrase means the Messiah, right?
And it carries its own weight.
And here's the thing. Do you understand what I mean if I say Jesus is not the only begotten son? He was the only begotten son. But after Father was born, Jesus loses the title of only. Does that make sense? So Jesus is the begotten son, and so is Father. But Jesus is. It's only true that Jesus was the only begotten son until Father was born. And
it makes a lot of sense.
And I'm going to criticize my teacher William Haynes here, but I want to preface it by saying that not only do I love William, but I have learned so much. Right after I studied William's teachings in Lancaster Gate when I came back from Korea, it kind of revolutioned and deepened my understanding of divine principles so much. I have great gratitude. But obviously, like any great student, you disagree with your teacher on some things. So William has what I believe to be a strongly erroneous understanding of what begotten means. So William thinks that all human beings are created by God, meaning like I might create a sculpture over there, and it's
Hmm.
not part of me, it's not part of my substance. When your parents created you, physically, your genetics, they're part of your parents' substance. It becomes a new entity, right?
Yeah.
But spiritually, when God creates us, we are part of the substance of God. That's how we get to grow to becoming the image of God, right? So
Mm.
we're almost like clones of God, right? And
Yeah.
like a set like cell division. But William thinks that no, God just created some objects over there, but he created them to be like him. But that's not the case. God begot us, right? So William says that to beget something means it comes from the same substance of what you are. And that's what God did. God begot us, right? Just like when
Mm.
your parents had you spiritually and physically, they begot you. And so the word begotten means coming from, created by, coming from that person of the same substance. But that's not what the word means in the Bible. In the Bible, begotten means became perfect, right? So, or it means to be born with no connection to Satan's fallen lineage. So, Adam and Eve, in a sense,
Mm.
Eve was begotten daughter of God, right? But we don't say Eve was the
Mm.
only begotten daughter because she never made it to perfection. And you don't fully become God's child.
Mm.
Practically, the moment you come into existence as a baby, fallen or not, you're God's child. But when you become perfect and one with God, you can really say, now I'm one with God, I'm God's child, right? So Jesus kind of became the
Yeah.
begotten child of God when he became perfect, right? Father's the child of God
Hmm.
when he became perfect. I don't even know if Jesus or Father were born with original sin and when that was removed in the womb or before or after. It doesn't matter to me. What matters is they became perfect. And so true mother is distorting the concept of only begotten daughter, the begotten part, right? And they're saying things
Hmm.
like, well, the Holy Spirit went into Eve, but because she failed to become perfect, it came out and they put it on ice over there. And then it's so they're almost trying to make it sound like true mother's not even a person. She's the incarnation of the Holy Spirit. But she's a human being just like you and me. And begotten means to become perfect. Whether you were born, fall, or not doesn't matter. When you become perfect, you become
Hmm.
begotten. And true mother's not perfect, so she's not begotten or only begotten. It's just a phrase they're using to convince members to deify mother. And so yeah, it's problematic, and they're willing to use every trick in the book. And if anybody criticizes it, they say things like, "Oh, what have you got a problem with women? Are you being sexist?" Right? So
Yeah.
they'll use every trick in the book. And then if you point out to them, yeah, but Father taught this, like I did to Mike Mike
Malcolm.
Balcom. But to be fair to him, he sat down and he listened to me for 20 minutes with his wife, and
Hmm.
he was polite and friendly. And but then afterwards, after I made all his logical argument about, look, this is what Father taught for 50 years, and Mike, this is what you taught me, Mike. This is why I believe it, right? You've been a leader for a long time, and this is what Father taught, and now what you're saying is the opposite of that. Mike's answer
Hmm.
was just, well, I'm not really big on theology. I went to the seminary, but I don't think theology is important. But if theology is not important, then anything can mean anything, right? And if you
Hmm.
want to push a lie, then it helps to say there's no such thing as truth, right?
Mm.
And so that's what they're doing with truth. So that's very cool. You're getting the masters in that. And what are your aspirations after that? Do you want to be involved in the church or a
Well,
wider?
the whole UTS study thing happened just based on a recommendation. So one of the uncles in Lancaster Gate, he said, "Look, there's this opportunity. You can get sponsorship as somebody who helps out
Which
at church."
which uncle?
Uncle Robert Torok.
No, I don't know him. Okay.
Yeah, he moved over. He moved down. He was living in Scotland for a while with his wife. I mean, he's originally Romanian. His wife is
All right.
Ukrainian.
Yeah.
Anyway, they moved to Lancaster Gate maybe about 5 years ago. Uh, but yeah, he was studying there, and he said it's an opportunity. Are you interested? And so I looked into it, and I thought, why not? But I
Yeah.
mean, I'm also my main studies at the moment are I'm getting my master's in education or teaching.
So you're
So
doing
my
two
plan is,
masters,
yeah, at
double
the
masters. Nice.
yeah, it's
And
like
your degree, was it in philosophy?
yeah. So I graduated last year from
From
King's
King's.
College with
Yeah.
yeah uh, with a degree
And
in religion, philosophy, and ethics.
and then you went to Shepherd's Bush and started debating, street debating people.
I didn't mean to. I was actually on my way to
That
watch a football game.
was a great.
It was
No, that was a great video. You looked more like a hippie with the longer beard, though.
yeah.
But
I don't know what I was
you
doing.
came across really well though, because you weren't reactive, and you were patient, and you listened to the guy and you gave thoughtful answers. So yeah, you represented
Thank you.
well.
Yeah.
So
Thanks. It was
so when
honest.
you've got those two master's degrees, do you want to be a teacher in a high school or a college or
Well, actually, I'm gonna start off in an elementary school.
wow?
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
My original plan was to teach secondary school in the UK, but then
Hmm.
after meeting Alicia, she's American, and because they don't teach religious studies as a subject here
Yeah,
in
it's
their school,
against the
so,
Constitution or so they think.
yeah. So well, we were thinking probably I would move here, but then if I were to come here, I wasn't able to study to become a teacher to teach a secondary subject, you
Hmm.
know, because my undergraduate degree was not a subject they teach in secondary school. So
Yeah.
then I shifted courses to well, I still want to be a teacher, but maybe I'll teach elementary school, at least for now. And maybe later on down the line, once I'm a qualified teacher. I mean, there's even talk that under Trump they'll make religious studies a
Great
subject
again.
at school. Yeah, great again,
Yeah.
and religious. I'm making religious studies a subject. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens in the future. I
I
might
mean, maybe
end
it's
up
a
doing,
good way to start elementary, then move up to middle, then high school.
yeah.
But I see you more as an academic than a little kids teacher.
Yeah, I think what I like about it is I think I will do things while I'm an elementary school teacher. I don't think that's going to consume me and be like everything I do. I
Yeah.
like it because I like working with children. I worked as
Mm.
a football coach for
Right. Yeah.
kids who are elementary school age for a few years while I was doing my undergraduate degree. So I know I
And
enjoy working with that age.
your
And
dad's
I
been
think
teaching Sunday school for years, so you can get lots of tips from him.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And of course you were my Sunday school teacher as well.
Yeah, for
Uh,
a few times.
yeah.
But do you have any I don't want to beg the question here, but do you have any ambitions to get into the defense of our faith
Yeah,
at
so
all?
I
I'd like to host some debates is what is actually because it seems like one side of it doesn't even want to engage with the other side, but I think just have it out. It'd be exciting, wouldn't it, to watch debates?
yeah, I mean, and I think it's important because I really think that we need to have these conversations sooner rather than later. The longer it's
Yeah,
left to
for sure.
fester, the bigger the problem gets. The sooner we can address it and like deal
Mm.
with it and have it out in the open, like the sooner we can start to work towards
Yeah,
reconciliation or
we should have
at
had
least
them
like
a long time ago, shouldn't we?
100%. But we can't go back. So now all
Yeah,
we can do is have
exactly.
the conversation now,
And
or as soon as possible.
I have a theory. I have a theory that because our church has always tried to sanitize things for second generation or third generation, they've never allowed the second generation to openly discuss or acknowledge problems in our church. And so it frustrated so many second generation, they felt an inauthenticity about the church
Mm,
and they left because of that. So it was counterproductive. If church leaders would have trusted the kids more and trusted
yeah.
them to say, look, there's problems in our church, Injinim this and Hyungjinim that, and there's problems and let's discuss them, right? I think it would have inoculated a lot of the second generation from the negative feelings they had to deal with. And so
Hmm.
this desire to shield them from anything and just gives them a sterile version of the church wasn't helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I think I've been lucky because I that hasn't been my experience. Like
Yeah.
when I've wanted to, I've been able to ask questions and get
Mm.
answers and have these
Yeah.
discussions on the more controversial topics. For
Mm.
whatever reason, that was just my experience growing up. And I
Yeah.
appreciate it a lot because for me, there's no point having a faith if you're not allowed to question it. you know, then
Yeah.
it's not authentic. If you're not allowed to question it or at least
E-
try to
e-
understand it more
exactly. Yeah.
deeply, there's no foundation there. It's just like you were saying earlier, it's just obedience, but there's not
Yeah.
much more substance to it than obedience.
This might
So,
sound this might sound a bit off topic, but I'd like to tell a little story as an
yeah.
example, because I don't know if you know my YouTube channel, Pathfinding, but it's I focus on digging down to the mechanics of how everything works, spiritual things,
Mm.
philosophy, biology, evolution, and mechanics is really the core of it. Mechanics is not sexy, right? It's not romantic, so it can
No.
even sound depressing. When I was 18, I went to a college to take a psychology class, and the teacher really blackpilled me. He said, "Oh, there's no such thing as love. It's just this hormone that your brain produces, and just so you'll
Oh,
mate and continue your DNA." And I was like so
yeah.
blackpilled by that, I gave up studying psychology. But actually, that's part of a whole larger picture to help you. It's like the scaffolding to help you learn about relationships and love. So I always want to look at the mechanics of
Yeah.
something, and I feel it always helps. And I'll tell you a story that about 5 or 6 years ago, I heard a story from some second gen. They told me about a workshop in the USA. And after the Divine Principle lectures or whatever lectures they were giving them, the lecturer, the American lecturer, did a Q&A session, asked if anybody wants to ask a Q&A. And you've always got to be careful with kids or teenagers because you never know what they're going to ask, right? And so one kid in the
Yeah.
class, he wanted to ask an edgy question, right? He was being a bit of an edgelord. So he said,
Mm.
if somebody is raped, if somebody is raped, does that mean they're fallen? And the teacher
Mm.
apparently just said yes and moved on, right? And without any
Wow.
explanation. And then I heard from this guy that actually there was a sister, second gen sister in that audience who had been raped and she hadn't told anybody, maybe because of shame or shock or whatever. But then hearing that from the lecture must have been such a burden for her. So I was angry when I heard about that, and I thought
Yeah.
this is what the teacher should have said to them, right? He should have explained the mechanics of divine principle and how the spirit works. He should have said the person who was raped, they're impacted by that, they're damaged by it. You could even say polluted by that experience spiritually, but they're not guilty.
Hmm.
They're completely innocent. In fact, they're a victim, right? And so it's a little bit like this. If somebody throws themselves off a building to commit suicide, dies, and another person is pushed off that building, the person who threw themselves off the building is guilty of a sin, committing
Hmm.
suicide. The person who was pushed off is completely innocent, but they're both dead, right?
Hmm.
The consequences are the same, but one person is guilty and one person is not guilty. And so when a person goes off and
Hmm.
ruins their spirit with promiscuous sex, they're guilty and they suffer the damage of what happened. But when a person is raped, they're completely innocent. In fact, they're victims and they should be nurtured and cared for, but there's still some damage to
Yeah.
their spirit. And there's just a
Hmm.
process, just like when you get poisoned in your physical body, there's a process to go by to purify out that thing that was forced upon her. And then after a
Hmm.
certain period, then she can return back to purity, right? Purity is just like a chemical state, like a spiritual state. It's not a legal state. It's not a guilt or innocence state. And so she was made slightly impure by that being forced upon her, but she has no guilt at all. She shouldn't feel guilty about it.
Mm.
But she can feel like something's impacted me, and now I have to take steps, just like with physical damage. And I think
Yeah.
if somebody was raped in that situation and they heard the explanation in that way, in the mechanic sense, they still wouldn't be happy, obviously, about what happened to them, but they would feel better about their standing, wouldn't they? And they would feel
Yeah.
hope that, okay, I'm not guilty. I don't have to be ashamed. In
Yeah.
fact, people are loving me extra and nurturing me and helping me recover from it. So
Hmm.
I think in our church there's a discomfort, and also to a certain degree, some lecturers lack an understanding of the mechanics of divine principle. But chapter 1 in divine principle has given us everything we need to understand how the spirit and body interact, right? And so
Yeah.
we can explain these things in a mechanical way so that it inspires people to know that they can take agency on their spirit rather than just thinking in legal terms. So yeah, in the same way, I think it would be a healthy thing for there to be debates going on, and
Yeah.
really raw Q&As going on among blessed children and even first generation. The first gen are a little bit more stuck in their ways, I think, and not that open.
Mm.
But second gen, I mean, I arranged a few debates in Lancaster Gate. I arranged one on Brexit, right? There was some members who were Brexiters and some Remainers, and it was quite heated. And it was fun.
Yeah.
And so I think it would be a healthy thing for there to be debates. But the church never wants to have debates because they don't want any. They want to control the narrative. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, so I was thinking about setting up a Twitch channel and a YouTube channel for live streaming and Facebook, live stream on all of them.
Yeah.
And sometimes host debates because I watch lots of debates on YouTube and they're fun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Me too.
we can invite a couple of people to be the pro only begotten daughter and a couple of people to be the anti, and just let them have a respectful debate and make sure the host controls the microphone so people don't shout at each other, because there's nothing worse in a debate than when two people talk over each other, or
Yeah.
or when people use sophistry, like, and then they don't engage honestly. So moderators should really be strict. And so also sometimes I might host a Q&A sessions where people can come and ask any question they want about faith stuff, no matter how raw, like the example I just gave. And anyway, I'll organize the channels and I'll start doing, I think probably Sunday, or it could be a weekday, just a regular time slot, and let people from all around the world just come in, members and even non-members. We
Yeah.
shouldn't be ashamed to air our laundry, or even non-members to come in and see what's this crazy religion up to. So
Yeah, it'll be fascinating for some people. I can imagine people who are, especially religious studies students in universities.
Oh yeah.
Like for example, I had a course on new religious movements in my last year, and if I were some outsider who was studying new religious movements and there was this debate going on online, I would tune in.
and into one.
Yeah.
MMRA, make Moonies relevant again.
Yes, yeah.
We used to be quite controversial, but now it's like nobody even knows who we are anymore. So we need to get back in
kind of
there.
unknown.
All right.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
if we do a debate, you've got to be one of the panel.
Yeah, I enjoy these things, to be honest. And like I
Okay.
said, I think the discussion needs to be had sooner rather
Yeah.
than later.
Yeah.
And going back to your question in terms of like, do I see what do I see myself doing in the
Yeah.
future, or aspiring to, or like seeing myself as a defender of the faith? I think I'm kind of lucky because a lot of I get along with most people. So I think I had this thought while we were talking where I can imagine myself having the same conversations that you've had with other people, but just because people see me as like a second gen or someone who is like maybe more palatable for whatever reason,
No, for sure.
they would be able to like
I'm
have that discussion
Marmite.
with me.
I appreciate that I'm a Marmite guy.
Yeah.
Right.
But I was thinking, like, I share a lot of opinions with you. Like, a lot of the views you express today, I didn't have to take notes down on because it's like I see it somewhat similarly.
Yeah.
But like, if I have the conversation, I feel like people are more likely to sit at the table.
Well, it's true, because I joined the church just, as I said, 10 days after my 19th birthday. But from day one, I was treated like a black sheep. And that's fine.
Yeah.
I've always been an outsider and black sheep. But you know what? All my life in the church, I joined MFT. I couldn't get up for morning service because I always stayed up too late and I missed morning service and I was drowsy. But I fundraised all day and I did everything right. But in those days, it was so strict. If you didn't go to morning service, they thought you were invaded by Satan. So I developed a reputation. You know, I was like, after 6 months on MFT, I was in London in the house, and the MFT leader was giving me a dressing down, and I was a bit stubborn and not listening. And it was midnight, and he just kicked me out on the street in the middle of the night. That was how they treated us in those days. I had no family, so nowhere to go. Midnight, and it was cold and rainy. And I was just told, right, get out, and I thought I was being kicked out of the church at the time.
Yeah.
So it turned out quite good, because then I ended up going to America. So I escaped 3 more years of MFT slavery and I went to America. So it was an evil thing the person did, but it worked out really well for me. Anyway,
nice.
So I've always been a black sheep, and I've always been considered a faithless rebel type. But most of the members, most of the first generation who would look down on me as not having strong enough faith, most of those left the faith.
Yeah.
So 40 years later, most of the people that were looking down at me and I haven't got enough faith, they left the church and stopped believing in the faith, and I'm still here defending it. So
Yeah, yeah.
so sometimes it's good to have a black sheep figure, because I can say things that most people they've got too many connections and relationships there they don't want to harm to say. But I can be the bulldozer that just goes in, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I'm not that diplomatic, right? And so
Yeah.
sometimes my content is very good, but because I'm not diplomatic and I don't have so good relationships, then people close their hearts to it. So sometimes if there's a message that we need to get through, I can find the acceptable face of truth, which is somebody like yourself or somebody else. So you're right,
Yeah.
yeah. It's definitely the packaging. The packaging is definitely important sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of my future here in this community, my plan is to settle down here in America and Utah. And some of my siblings have come over to Utah and visited over here.
Wow, that's
Uh,
great. Are you in
yeah,
Salt Lake City?
pretty much. It's like it's not like the center, but it's like living in Hanwell in London. It's
Yeah,
not like the city of
right,
London,
yeah.
but it's still part of London.
I think Utah is about 60% Mormon, so does it feel like
Yeah.
Mormonville everywhere?
Uh, it's like it's all around you. You see a lot of Mormon temples.
Yeah,
But what is like surprising to me is I really thought that the culture would be more obvious, but it's not. It does probably help that I go to a more liberal university, like not one of the Mormon universities, but like
yeah.
just like a,
I,
an
I
irreligious one.
I was surprised when I looked up the crime statistics for Utah. I thought they'd be dramatically lower, being 60% Mormon, but they're not that much. They are lower than the national average, but not that much lower.
Yeah,
Uh,
I do feel safe here though. I do feel like the standards definitely are higher here than in other
yeah,
places.
Utah has less violent and drug crime, and it has more white collar crime.
Oh, that sounds about right.
Yeah, that's cool.
I mean,
So,
I
how old
never.
are you now?
I'm 23.
Yeah, so you don't need to decide your entire life course. Obviously, I want you to get in on the fight, and
Yeah,
but
yeah,
but the army I'm trying to build is kind of like the one your dad suggested, right? I don't want the opposing armies that want to destroy each other, right?
hmm
It should be a fight of reconciliation,
yeah,
but you can still fight to reconcile all parties while having a red line that not if it means calling father a sinner, for example,
yeah,
right? So you can still fight for that. And the big concern is that I heard, for example, that after they made the new version of Cheongseongung, removing all the criticisms of True Mother and all the stuff like that, I heard in Korea they burned all the existing copies, the first edition copies, right?
wow,
That's
really?
that's still a rumor, but it's got the ring of truth about it, right? And when people want to do that kind of thing, that's what they do. And do you remember when I posted on Facebook and I said, if there's a new truth coming, because Father said, yeah, divine principle is not everything, and so there's new revelations to come. But Father gave us what we need. But if there's a new truth going to be revealed, or even realized or developed, it has to build on existing truth. It can't
hmm
destroy and oppose. So, for example, if when Jesus said, "You have read that it's an eye for an eye, but I say you should love your enemy," he wasn't destroying a truth. He was saying an eye for an eye means restrict your revenge to make it
Yeah,
proportionate. Don't go crazy. But now we're going to go one
hmm
further and say love the person and forgive them, right? To make reconciliation. So he's building on
yeah. I
existing
remember that
improvements.
post actually.
Yeah, and
hmm
and and so, but if Jesus had said something, he didn't. But if he had said, "You've heard it said that a man should not commit adultery," but I'm saying sleep with whoever you want. That's an opposing truth that destroys something,
Yeah,
right? It replaces
yeah,
it,
yeah.
and
Yeah,
that's what the pharaohs used to do. You know, they used to demolish the pyramids their ancestors built and build on top of them, so they could outclass them. And so, if
yeah,
any of this new theology or new truth means to deny true Father and call him a sinner or to rewrite divine principle, we can we can oppose the argument while at the same time working to reconcile the parties. And
Hmm.
I think Hyungjinim should be doing that. And so we can do that. And so that's why I created the concept of the title Original True Parents Family Ministry. Because the
Hmm.
original true parents image that we had, I still want to see mother as that true mother
Yeah.
in that original true parents. And if she stumbled and become apostate, she can come back. And if she doesn't, when she goes to the afterlife, it's for father to re-educate her, right? And
Hmm.
um, and so the reason why I call it family is because it's the whole lineage that I'm looking at, not just true
Hmm.
parents, right? Family
Yeah.
ministry. And the reason I use the word ministry is because a ministry is not an organization, it's not a new church or a separate group. A ministry is just activity within a group. When you have a
Hmm.
new organization, you have people in authority. Even a ministry can have organization and even some funds, but an organization or a church has power and authority. Once you have that, it will just become corrupt as well. So it'll just be an extra
Yeah.
organization that's corrupt. So our ministry is just working within our faith. Let people stay
Yeah.
sanctuary or FFWP or whatever, but we want to try to reconcile them, but at the same time separate off the idea of opposing new theology which we feel is corrupting. And I think debates will be an exciting and fun way to do that, won't it?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. It's just like finding people who are willing to engage in the debate in the first place.
Yeah, and initially,
But
because
I think there's a real need for it.
Adja let me give a talk at his Sunday service, but only about 10 people came because everybody was warned off and everybody was told I was evil and that they shouldn't go. And so
That's so silly.
one person even spread false rumors about me, like accusations of stuff, just completely made up.
No, okay. I didn't know.
It was about 12 years ago. I was in Lancaster Gate, and there was a second gen who I will not name, and she was fine before she went to Chongpyong. She was really friendly. And then when she came back
Hmm.
from Chongpyong, she got appointed as some kind of leadership position. And then suddenly, whenever she talked to anybody, or especially me, they're just looking through you like you're a dead ghost. Because once they become a leader, they just start assessing you as somebody to control, not as a person they have to relate to. And
Hmm.
and I use a nickname because she was really friendly at the beginning. So let's say her name was something like Tracy, which I'll make up a name. So instead of
Hmm.
calling her Tracy, I might call her Trace. It's kind of like a shortened, or sometimes you make it longer, like. Or if my name's Pete,
Yeah.
somebody might call me Petey, right, instead of Pete.
Yeah.
And so 10 years later, when it's found out that I'm going to give the sermon in South London church, she calls up the pastor and says, "Oh, he called me this nickname," like as if I'm trying to make some kind of groomy connection to her. And then her other accusation was when he lived in Lancaster Gate, he would have second gen brothers come up to his room, right? But my apartment in Lancaster Gate was an office. There was no bed in there. It was
Hmm.
like an office with all my computers and stuff. And Neil O'Neill and all the they were all in the late teens and 20s. And
Hmm.
there was some wayward younger second gen, like 16 or 17, who didn't get much attention and had broken families. And I would entertain them and I would talk to them about faith all the time. But she had to describe it in a way that also sounds creepy and gloomy, right? And and um and then she also just said to the pastor something weird like he made second gen uncomfortable. But did I make you uncomfortable when when I was in Lancaster Gate?
Well, such a blanket statement. He makes
Yeah,
second gen
exactly.
uncomfortable.
It's such a so I wrote her a long letter, personal letter, explaining blah blah blah, and she refused to read it on the grounds that it might upset her. But that's what people do. They want to slander you. They don't give specifics. They just make up something that they know the other person might take as like that. But credit to Adja, he didn't get swayed by that, and so my sermon went down well, and Adja seemed to like it. And after that, I asked Adja if he'd like to debate me, and I even wanted
Yeah.
to do it in the Lancaster Gate ballroom. And initially he agreed, but then he seems to have withdrawn back from that. So I think he got the call. They got to him. So
No, you should push for that though. Again, I don't know if he's just like completely closed to it now, or if he's just kind of not
I
thinking
did.
about it.
Ideally, it would be great to be in Lancaster Gate with like 100 people in the room and a big panel, but probably it's going to be more easy to arrange like this, like
Hmm.
A Zoom debate with like two people on each side and a moderator. I'd have to
Yeah.
find a good moderator because I want to be on one of the sides. So it can be me and you versus somebody who's really bought into the only begotten daughter stuff.
Hmm.
Right? I
I mean,
doubt I doubt Damien Dunkley would join, but there have to be somebody who's a bit of a maverick who's willing to jump in and debate us.
yeah.
You can have a think.
Yeah, I mean, I think where I stand is I find it easier to go into debates because I'm open to being persuaded that what I think is not maybe the whole truth, or like I'm
Yeah,
missing out on something. I've The one thing I struggle to kind of envision is finding somebody who's willing to be like that on the other side of the debate.
yeah. It's like the difference between a conservative and a left-wing debater. The left-wing debaters are usually not that honest, intellectually honest. But what I'd like them to, even if I can't convince people in the debate, at least
Hmm.
I'd like them to admit that they believed what we believe for the first 10, 20, 30, 40 years of their faith, and now they've
Hmm.
changed, right? So
Hmm.
they won't even admit that they've changed their faith. They treat us like
Yeah.
we're the ones that have changed our faith. So if they could just admit, yeah, it's true, I used to believe that Father was perfect, and now I believe he was a sinner. Just
Yeah,
at
that's a
least
starting point.
get them to face their own apostasy in a sense.
Hmm.
We'll see. There's got to be some maverick out there who's willing to, and even if they're not willing to debate honestly, just let them make their case, and we'll counter it
Yeah.
and let the audience decide. Because
Hmm.
do you know who William Lane Craig is?
I do.
He's
Yeah.
Yeah. So he says when he debates, he doesn't debate to convince the person. It's for the benefit of the audience, so they can see
Mm.
the argument. So I'm preparing to make some videos on my YouTube
Yeah, it's a
channel.
smart way of looking at it.
Yeah, on my YouTube channel, I'm preparing to make some videos disagreeing with William Lane Craig's theology, like on the atonement
Oh,
and penal substitution and stuff like that. But yeah, it's going to take some time to do that, to
yeah.
prepare it. But all right, so yeah, that was a good talk. You're okay with this going on the YouTube channel?
Yeah, yeah.
Not that anybody's going to see it. I don't know how your dad's going to feel about me dragging
I'm
you into all this.
I don't know. We're all kind of independent thinkers. You can put whatever you feel is appropriate on
Okay,
the channel.
yeah. I think we had a good, earnest discussion. Uh, so yeah, I'll edit it and I'll treat the audio to make it improve it and put it on the YouTube channel. And then I'll start doing outreach to get people to join the channel and the Facebook group. And eventually we'll get enough people that we can have a debate. But I'll
Hmm.
try and arrange the live stream. And even if just 3 or 4 people come in, it'll be good practice
Yeah.
to
Actually,
chat with people.
when I was telling people that about this and asking if anyone would like to join, there were a few people who said, "Oh, tell me about how it goes." Or so I don't know if those people would say, uh, like, "Oh, if there's a recording, I'd like to watch it." But it's possible.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just a bit worried because in the beginning I did a long spiel, right? And people might just think, man, this guy is just giving it this. And
They might
it's,
tune out.
yeah, so I might edit into 2 videos and have our
Okay.
discussion part so they can just watch that because I think it'll be more engaging for them.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm still learning. I want to do more debates and discussions with people, so I'm still learning about the balance of it all. So that's
Yeah.
cool.
Sure.
Hopefully the Zoom recording worked properly. I
Yeah. I
won't
hope it's
know.
stable.
Yeah. All right then. Anyway, thanks for we had actually 2 hours and 15 minutes, so we just went over a little bit.
Yeah.
But
No, it's okay. It's like I have some
yeah.
other things to do, but it's not like super pressing. I'm still
All right.
technically on holiday and everything, so it's not like
Cool. All right, I'll send you a link when I've got it all edited. So you
perfect.
can
All
send it
right. Well, thank
around.
you.
All right,
Good
yeah,
to
thanks
catch
for
up
logging
again.
on. Good night.
Yeah. Good
Bye.
night.